Welcome to the Nerdstalgic podcast with your host, the Ginger Bookworm. Nerdstalgic with the Ginger Bookworm. Nerdstalgic with the Ginger Bookworm.
Howdy Beans, and welcome back to another exciting episode of the Nerdstalgic podcast. I'm your host, Luke the Human. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're all good. As per usual, before we get into today's topic, I want to do a bit of housekeeping because I like to keep my house nice and clean. So 3 things I want you to do for me before we get into today's topic. Number 1, make sure that you follow me on Twitter at nerdstalgic_pod. Number 2, if you listen to this on YouTube, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And finally, if you listen to this on Spotify on your mobile phone and you haven't done so yet, make sure to leave a rating of 1 to 5 stars. So if you can do all 3 things of those for me at the beginning, I will be eternally grateful. So today we're going to be looking at XIII, or 13, as it is more commonly and easier to pronounce known as, from 2003. But I'm not playing the 2003 cult classic. I am playing the 13 remake from 2020 to 2022. Yeah, it's a bit complicated, but we'll get into it. For anybody that doesn't know, this is part of my £5 bargain or bin game review episodes. How this series works, again, for anybody who isn't already aware, I take a game that I got for £5 or below. That can be on the Xbox Game Store. That can be in a car boot, charity shop, anywhere and everywhere. The idea and concept of this is that I take any game that's £5, nothing more, but it has to be £5, £4.99, £3, £2, £1 free. Anything like that. It can't be £5, 1p, anything like that. It's not allowed, right? And the idea and premise behind it is that I take these games and I review them. I look into them, but I try to come to a conclusion. Are they worth the bargain? Have I found myself a treasure, or have I found myself something that's worthy of the bin, basically? So, for example, so far I have covered Kingdom Hearts 3. That, I would say, is a bargain. Next one I did was Escape from Dead Island. That, I would say, is a bargain if you are looking for achievements. If not, then I couldn't really recommend it. And finally, I did DuckTales. And that one is a huge bargain. And to be honest, even though I got that one for like £2 or something like that, I would happily pay at 15 for that. Like, it was that good and I had that much great of a time. And it's so much nostalgia. You just can't pay for that kind of nostalgia. So again, highly recommend that one. But those are some of the games I've covered so far. And we just tried to come to a conclusion if they're worth it or not. If I got myself some money, if I'd pay more, pay less, or if it's a complete stinker and it's one that, yeah, I can see why now it costs £5 or less because it's terrible. And that's kind of the idea and plot of this series so far. So, without further ado, let's get into it. So I'm going to talk about the game's plot. So, the country remains in a state of shock following the assassination of President Sheridan. You wake up wounded and with amnesia on a deserted beach on the East Coast. The only clues as to your identity are a tattoo of the number 13 near your collarbone and a locker key. Even though your memory is failing, you discover that you have the reflexes of a highly trained professional fighter. You set off in search of your past, discovering that you played a role in the murder of the President of the United States of America and revealing the most astonishing conspiracy ever hatched in the country's history. So that's the game's plot. As for the development, so it's a bit rocky. As I said, I'm not playing the original from 2003, and we'll talk about that as to why in a minute. I'm playing the remake. The reason why it's so choppy is because this remake had a lot of issues. So the original remake came out 2020, and it was a complete failure. It was rushed out the gate. It wasn't properly finished. There was tons of issues. So Merckroids, they are the publishers, took the license back off and gave it to another publisher to fix it, and then the game came out again in 2022. I'm playing the 2022 version, the fixed version, or the most recent up-to-date remake version. But I thought it'd be quite interesting to look into this game because, again, it's a cult classic. I never played the original from 2003. I always wanted to. It's always one of those that was on my radar. Never got round to it. I actually remember getting a video game, and this was advertised in. Remember when video games came with manuals? It was in the back of the manuals. Oh my god, that looks so cool. Never got round to it, sadly. But I wanted to when I heard about the remake, and then the remake came out, and I heard it was terrible. But then I heard that they fixed it, and then 2 years later, in 2022, they came out with the fixed version, the proper remake or remaster, and that's the version I'm going to be playing today. So I want to talk about the development of it to kind of give you a more in-depth look, but that's kind of the long and short as to why it's so rocky. So the remake of the original from 2003 video game was announced on April the 18th, 2019, with Play Magic developing the game and Mercroids publishing the game for Microsoft Windows, Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4, and Xbox One. The game was originally scheduled for release on November the 13th until it was delayed to 2020 for further development. In June 2020, the game was announced to be scheduled for release on November the 10th, 2020 for Windows, PlayStation 4, and Xbox. In October 2020, it was announced that the port of the game for the Nintendo Switch was delayed to 2021. So you can already see it's quite rocky. But listen to this. So the original plan was to remaster the game using original assets and Unity plug-ins. Unfortunately, the original source code was deemed lost, and the 2003 version was running in an extremely outdated game engine. Therefore, the team had no choice but to redo the entire game from scratch, which means hiring new staff and extending the release date to remake the levels, assets, cutscenes, and animations. Due to the poor reception to the game, Mercroids announced in June 2022 that they had replaced Play Magic with Tower 5 as the developer, who had been working on fixing the issues from the 2020 release. Mercroids released the improved version on September the 3rd, 2022, with this version given as a free update to those that brought the 2020 version. So, yeah, a lot of issues. So the original people that bought the game came out from the original sort of developers that Play Magic. Came out terrible, didn't do very well, and a lot of people crapped on it. And I saw a lot of videos of people crapping on it. And then you had this other team that was fixing all the issues. They ended up given the chance to properly release the game and fix it and smooth it all out. And then it was finally released, and that's the version I'm playing today. The reception to 13 received generally unfavorable reviews from most platforms. A lot of criticism were aimed towards the remake's unnecessary changes from the original, such as the art style and the weapon limit, as well as the game's numerous technical and audio issues. Developer Play Magic and publisher Mercroids issued a joint statement apologising to players for the state of the game at release, adding that the COVID-19 pandemic had significantly affected the game's production. On Steam, the game received an overwhelmingly negative rating from players. The release of the remake caused an increase in sales of the original game, causing the 2003 game to outsell the remake in the first week of the remake's release in the UK. Oh God, you know it's bad when people are buying the old game apart from the new one. According to former staff of Play Magic, it was reported that the CEO and creative director, I can't even begin to pronounce that, Giuseppe Krugelio was to be blamed as for the game's failure due to poor project management, a lack of staff, low morale, and toxic company culture. He had denied these allegations but admitted to a problem with late payments, claiming that they were the result of cash flow problems from project cancellations and unpaid fees from clients. So that it didn't get a lot of good, basically, reception when it came out. Like I said, I heard this game having so many people being negative about it, and for good reason, because I saw a lot of the footage and it was a buggy mess. But my experience going into this, like I said, I've never played the original 13 game, so I have no... What word can I use here? I have no attachment to the original IP. I can't sit here and say, you know, oh, I played the original and this one is terrible because X, Y, and Z. I can't say that because I've never played it. So I just want to put my cards on the table of like the review you're going to get in a minute after I've done the introduction will be my full 100% thoughts and feelings on this game and no prior sort of exceptions, no prior sort of knowledge on the previous one. I'm going to play it for what it is, and I'm going to rate it for what it is. So I just want to put my cards on the table right now. As for my experience so far, so I've played about 2 hours worth of the game. I like it. I enjoy it. To be honest, it feels, even though they remade it because they had to remaster it and remake a lot of the things because they lost a lot of the original source and code from the original game. Even though it's a remake, so far I'm quite enjoying it. It feels like a game from 2003. It feels like a classic game that I brought up with. It's very linear. The levels are quite sort of one directional sort of thing, but I don't judge it for that because again, it's a game from 2003. At the end of the day, I'm not expecting multiple paths, being able to jump and vault over things and stuff like that. Like, no, I'm not expecting that. I enjoy the combat, the fun. Like the gunplay is a little awkward. I had to put aim assist on. I don't usually play with aim assist, really. I've played games long enough where I can aim a gun in a game. But it's a bit wonky, a bit jank, so I have to put aim assist on so I can at least, somewhat shoot fluently, without actually missing loads of shots before the camera decides to zone in on the actual enemy, the retinal sort of thing. But I like it. I enjoy it. So far, it's fun. The story seems interesting. I love the art style. It feels like a comic book. Well, let's say that. It feels like a comic book, but it looks a bit too polished, if that makes sense. It looks a bit too sort of good. Okay, that makes no sense, does it? I'm complaining and it looks good. How can I explain this? When you're playing a comic, Borderlands, like when you play Borderlands, which has got the comic art style, it looks a bit rough, looks a bit tough. There are moments where certain characters look a bit sort of, jank's a bad word. I can't think of the right words at the moment. You've played Borderlands, you know what Borderlands characters look like. You can tell they've been drawn. You can tell that they are not completely sort of clean. They look a bit rough done around the edges, but that's what makes those characters look unique, is because they actually look like someone's drawn them with like crayons, well, not crayons, but colors and pastels and stuff like that. With this one, you can tell they've got that comic art style, but they just look a bit too good. But I don't know if that makes sense. I don't know. It's just one of those where I can tell it looks like a comic book, but at the same stage, it's like they went for comic book, but they also went for like current gen or next gen sort of looks, possibly. What does that make any sense? I don't know, but I like the way it looks, and as it plays, it's all right. I've only run into a few bugs here and there, but they're not game breaking. More of them are just funny. For example, there was this guy on this rock face, and he was shooting at me. So I shot the guy, killed him. His body fell. So like the physics work. So like his body fell fine. That was great. And then we had a little like comic sort of cutscene that came up, and you actually can see the guy fall. That was great. But his gun just hovered in the air. And again, it's not game breaking. It's one of those being like, oh, well, okay. His gun is actually in the air hovering. Like it's not lodged onto anything. It's just there. Again, I only ever saw that happen once. There's not been any other issues, to be honest, that I can find. Maybe in the latter game there are. But I would say so far this game seems pretty polished. Pretty well done, Tower 5, they fix a lot of the issues, if whatever they were, because again I don't know them all, but whatever issues they were seem to be fixed because it plays quite well. So far 2 hours in, it seems all right. Generally I'm happy to keep going, keep playing. I'm still enjoying it. It's great for achievements. A lot of the achievements are quite simple. I like, do a thing and you get a thing. Sort of that, that like there was one where you had to get a certain amount, get 100% armor. And if you get 100% armor, you get achievement. Or, there are ones where like you're in a beach hut and it's like, okay, smash everything in the beach hut. So you smash everything in the beach hut and then you get an achievement just for like wrecking everything. So it's random bits of achievements here and there. But as an achievement hunter, I don't mind. I'm happy to do this weird, odd sort of busy work and stuff like that because I get more out of the game, me personally anyway. But yeah, I'm enjoying it. So far, it's a lot of fun. I'm going to go off now and play it and finish it. And then when we come back, I'm going to let you all know my thoughts and feelings on the 13 remake. Allons-y. Right, so I've just finished my playthrough of 13. My first impressions going in is that I really enjoy it. You know, for the nostalgia feel of it, like you can definitely feel that this is a game from 2003. Even though it's a remake, it still feels like a 2003 video game. It's very linear. It's like, there's loads of things that nowadays, we don't get anymore because technology is better and a lot of sort of ease of use sort of features. But you'd get to like an end of a mission, you'd go for the whole sort of one mission and you'd get all these weapons and health packs and armor, and then you would start on you'd go to a checkpoint, have a cutscene, and then the next mission you've got none of anything that you've collected, you haven't got anymore, and you've got to start from scratch. And the enemies aren't very sort of clever. A lot of them will just run at you and stuff like that. Like, it is very much a nostalgia trip, but you have the flip side of that nostalgia trip. So even though I enjoyed it and I got the nostalgia, you still have those sides of this game where it's fact of, this is a game from 2003. There's a reason why games nowadays are a lot more user friendly. You don't lose your weapons after you finish a mission and stuff like that, because again, we realize that's just no, we just don't like that anymore. And again, obviously technology and advancements and stuff like that, and programming, you can do things like that now in modern games, and it wasn't not really an issue. But back then, due to memory and data and stuff like that, it was easier just to kind of start you from scratch with just your fists and like a pistol than to give you everything that you've already collected. So I get that. But yeah, I like it for what it is. It is a nostalgia trip for me. I quite enjoy that. It's nice to go down that rabbit hole because these are the games that I grew up with. Growing up with games like this, playing them on the Dreamcast, on the GameCube, on the original Xbox, playing games like Destroy Humans and stuff like that. Even now playing the remakes of those ones, I really enjoy. I played both the remasters of Destroy Humans 1 and 2. And they have that same sort of feeling of like, yes, I know it's a modern remake and modern retelling, but it still inherently feels like an older game. And some people don't like that. I, for one, really, really do, because I grew up with these sort of games. So I sort of gravitate towards them a lot more than probably somebody else would. But yeah, my first impressions is it's all right. It's good. It's nostalgia trip. That's the best way to explain it. If you grew up playing video games in the early 2000s and maybe even the 90s, then you'll be right at home here with the nostalgia. If you are a modern gamer, like, you're not as old as I am, then you might find it a bit tedious at times, and a little bit of unfair, and probably a little bit, what's the word I'm looking at? Sort of retro. Probably the best word, even though it kills me to say it. Yes, there is that there, but I feel like if you can get past sort of that feeling of an older sort of game, enjoy it for what it is, I think you would find enjoyment out of it. My thoughts on the story and the gameplay. It took me a while to get into what was going on in the story, to be honest. I don't know if it's the remaster or it was like this in the original. Again, I'm not sure, but the cutscenes, like, especially, well, in this version anyway, I can't really speak to the original, but the cutscenes in this one, you get a little bit of dialogue and a little bit of scenes, and then you're straight in the mission. But there's no sort of loading screen or tell you that anything's over. And then sometimes you don't even get that. Sometimes it's you've finished one level, and then you're in the next level completely, and it's like no exposition of like how you got from one place to the next, how you got from like a cityscape to now you're in the forest, things like that in the snow. So again, I don't know if that was a remake problem or that was what the original game was like. I don't know. Again, early retro sort of 2000 sort of game, I guess, maybe. I don't know. But it took me a while to get into it. But from what I was able to take away, it reminds me a lot of Jason Bourne, how you play as a character called 13, and you are on a boat trying to figure out this evil sort of conspiracy, this evil sort of organization, this evil syndicate. You get noticed as you're running off the boat, you jump off the boat, you get shot, you lose all your memories, and then the game is basically you going through trying to find out who you are, what it is you're trying to do, and who this syndicate is, and why people are after you, and why and how you're involved. And I found it kind of interesting, but again, at the same stage, I still couldn't get into it. Eventually I just stopped listening to the story and was like, you know what, okay, I'm just gonna shoot things, really. I'm just going to follow the markers of where I've got to go, shoot whoever's in my way, and that's basically it. It wasn't until halfway through the game that I realised that David Duchovny from Mulder himself from X-Files is in this game. He actually voices the main character, 13, the character you're playing as. I didn't notice it till halfway through because, again, I couldn't hear, like, there wasn't enough moments where he would talk long enough where I could hear his voice. And that didn't happen until like halfway through the game. So it was like, oh God, that's David Duchovny. Bloody hell. And then there was another one as well, the guy who plays Mayor West in Family Guy, or you might know him as Batman, the legend that is Adam West. He's in this as well, but again, I could hear his voice straight away because you get a lot more dialogue from him. So I was like, oh my God, there's Adam West. And then there was like, oh, it's Duchovny. But again, like, it wasn't enough in terms of cutscenes and story exposition for me to really sort of realize who these characters were, what they were trying to do. Like, oh God, that's so-and-so actor, but I still didn't know as to who I was or what I was doing. So again, like I said, eventually I just kind of stopped focusing on the story and then just focused on the gameplay, which is the next bit, which is the gameplay. As I mentioned in my first impressions, it's a game from 2003. It's very basic. It's not advanced. It's not going to blow your mind. It's not going to be like, oh my God, I can't believe these game features. I've never seen it before. Like, no. It's a 2003 video game. It's no different. You get your weapon wheel, you get your selection of weapons. Again, I don't know, maybe the shooting was better in the original, but the shooting here in the remake, like I mentioned in the introduction, I had to put aim assist on so that I could at least be comparable at shooting, because if you don't have aim assist on, it's really difficult to aim at any of the enemies. One of the things that really annoyed me was the fact of, if you press reload, like what you expect from modern games, and again, is if you press reload, and then as soon as you press reload, then after you've done reload, you press the aim down button and you can shoot. You can't do that in this game. Again, I don't know if it's a bug or if it's an issue, but you press reload and then you press the aim down button, the LT button to aim, and then you press the trigger button. It doesn't always work. You have to take your finger off the trigger button, and then off the aim button, then aim again, then press the trigger button for it to shoot. It's little things like this was a bit annoying. So I'd have an enemy right in front of me, and it'd be like, okay, I press reload, aim, fire, not working. All right, I've got to stop aiming, then go aim again, then fire. It was a bit of a nightmare. But the gameplay, it's very linear. There are moments where you can do stealth, but to be honest, again, I don't know if it's the AI or maybe the original game was like this. I doubt it, because the original game is kind of classed as a cult classic, as an incredible sort of game and experience. So more than likely it's the remaster version that they didn't get all the bugs out, possibly. There is a stealth feature, but it's not great. It's not great at all, to be honest. Enemies see you from a mile away, even if you're sneaking around. If you're crouching, they will just see you, then they'll shout alarm, and then they'll run around in a panic, and yeah, they'll just beeline for you. So like, there are moments in this game where it asks you to stealth, but it's not great. It isn't annoying or anything like that, but it's not great at all. And those moments where you have to stealth, it's a little bit more sort of friendlier, because again, they only throw like one enemy at you in a corridor, and you just wait for the enemy to kind of not look at you. Then you either karate chop them in the back, or you pick up a chair and you whack them over the head with a chair or broomstick or whatever you can find. But yeah, out of those moments, there's no point stealthing around. Like, there are achievements to get a certain amount of headshots without being seen and these sort of things. And I tried multiple times, but like I said, they see you from a mile away. So you're trying to peek around cover to kind of get a headshot, and then they see you straight away from miles, and it's like, well, how did you see me? And that's it, and it was like, I can't be bothered to go through this game to stealth. So in the end, again, like the story, I just gave up trying, and I was just like, if they give me a gun and they give me the ability to, I'm just going to shoot everything. And it was just easier than just being like, oh, I'm going to try and stealth through. Like, because, we all do it. We all play GTA, and we get a bit bored of running around shooting people and driving crazy. And we all play the senior citizen, basically. We drive around, we follow the speed limit, we stop at traffic lights, that sort of thing. We've all done it. And again, it's the same with shooter games. If you get given the ability and option to, do stealthy, you're going to give it a go. You're going to try and be stealthy. You're going to be that John Wick master assassin sort of character. Does it always work? Not always. We might get caught and we'll go, oh, I tried. Oh, you scamp, you caught me. All right, pull the gun out, let's start shooting everybody, that sort of thing. Like, we all try it, we all do it. But this game, it was one of those where it was a fact, if I tried it, it didn't work. I tried it again, still didn't work. And by this stage, I felt like I was repeating myself and going crazy. So I just gave up trying. And I only did it when the game needed me to do it. Other than that, I didn't want to bother. But the gameplay's all right. Like I said, it's old. It's an old system. It's old code. Again, don't expect to be blown away by it. I would say, going back to what I said in the impressions, is that it's a nostalgia trip, really. That's what this game is. It is a pure trip down nostalgia of playing a game that is from the early 2000s. It's a retro sort of experience, even though I hate using the word retro for something that I grew up with. You know what I mean? But yeah, don't expect to be blown away by the gameplay. Just realize it's an old game. It's an old experience, old features. And the shooting bits, when it works fun. But yeah, I would recommend put aim assist on. You'd have a lot more fun, less stressful time. To be honest, best sort of example I can give you. As for the art style, again, I mentioned it earlier. I enjoy it. I enjoy the art style. I quite like it. I like it when you shoot a gun, you have like a comic book puff of smoke out the front, and when enemies shoot you, they have that puff of smoke and that sort of cartoon fire as well. I also love sort of the design choice, and I know the original games had these as well, but the design choice of, like, if you shoot an enemy in the head, you get that sort of comic book strip up at the top of the screen where you can kind of watch the bullet go through their head and blows it and it goes splat like that, or you can see it, like, you get to see enemies coming before you see them. You get these like comic book screens that come down, and it'll show like an enemy walking through a door, and then you can quickly kind of get a drop on them before they come through the door, and that sort of thing. So the art style, I like it. I think it's interesting. It's definitely unique for what it was at the time. Obviously, nowadays we have like Borderlands and other sort of games that have that comic book sort of shell shading sort of look. But for what it was and what it is, I like it. But I think I mentioned this in the introduction. Even though I like the way it looks, I prefer the way the original game looks. I don't know, again, if it's to do with the fact of, because of the quality and because of the the hardware and the software at the time, like, graphics weren't that great, so it kind of added to the rustic look. It kind of made it look a lot more like you're playing a comic book. Whereas with this game, they've tried too hard, if that makes sense. And I feel like I'm going to confuse myself again. They try too hard with this. Like, it feels like a comic book, but it doesn't feel like a comic book. It feels like too good, too new, too polished, if that makes sense. So I prefer the art style of the original game, but I can see that they tried in a sort of modern setting to kind of retell this story here. But yeah, if I had to choose between the both, I would go with the art style of the original game, because it just looks more comic booky and more sort of accurate to what a comic book would feel like on screen and in a game, basically. On to my overall thoughts, to be honest. Overall, it's a nostalgia trip. That's the long and short of it, really. You'd play this game if you want to have that sort of feeling of nostalgia, playing a game from your youth. That's how I took it anyways. The fact of, I went in, as I do with every game, expected nothing, and what I got was nostalgia. What I got was that feeling of, I remember when games used to be like this, and then that sort of laugh that I had in my head of like, yeah, I now know why games are no longer like this. Because we all sort of collectively came together as gamers and was like, yeah, we don't like this anymore. Come on, we need things to be different and to change. And obviously developers were like, okay, we don't like this either. It was down to sort of console constraints, but as consoles and PCs have gotten a lot more powerful, that we can do a lot more with it, and we don't have to have these things, we don't have to have that things. We can take away that because we can streamline it. So for me, my overall experience is that I enjoyed it for the nostalgia side of it. There are a few sort of like little things, like they got rid of, I would say, majority of the issues. I didn't actually have any bugs or any problems. To be honest, the only issues I had was the fact of me getting lost, because again, these games, the way they were created back in the day, would how can I explain it? They were created to be difficult, and they were created to kind of make you stick with them for longer. So like the level designs were a bit confusing at times. Again, you don't get given a map. There is no way to know where you're going at times. So I'd get lost, and then the game would realize I get lost, and it would like throw the location icon of where I've got to go, and I'd follow the destination icon, and things like that. Or it'd be like they'd place that you get a grapple hook, and you can kind of swing like Spider-Man from grapple hooks to get from one place to the next. But sometimes they would hide those grapple hooks in places where you couldn't. It wasn't always logical where it would be, and you didn't know where it was. And it'd be moments where I'd be like, okay, where it is I've got to go. I have no idea where I've got to go. And I'd be looking around, don't know where it is. And eventually you'd find it in a corner somewhere, and you're like, I wouldn't think to look there. Why would you put it there, you know? And again, these are all just sort of things that you'd get from older sort of retro sort of games. But yeah, if you're looking for nostalgia, this one's for you. Is it worth the £5 entry fee, or is it not? I would say it is for the nostalgia. If you're looking for, like I said, a game where you want to have that old school experience, then by all means, 100% go for it. But if you're not, then you might find it a bit tedious, might find it a bit annoying. So I couldn't guarantee it for you. I would say I'm happy I didn't spend full price for it. I would happily buy this on sale. So I'm glad that I did. I would say wait for a sale as well. The achievement side of it, if you're getting it on Xbox or trophies on PlayStation, they've got some good trophies. They've got some good achievements. A lot of it is all sort of just doing things of like find a certain amount of health packs, find a certain amount of ammo packs and things like that, and armor, and kill enemies in a certain way. So a lot of it is mostly just specific, and then the rest of it is like specific things that are like the stealth, for example, that doesn't work, which again I tried multiple times and it didn't work. Or you had one where you was like get five in a row sniper headshots with a sniper rifle, which is all well and good, but the AI doesn't sit still, and when they do sit still, they know you're aiming at their heads, so they just duck straight away. As soon as you aim the cursor at their heads, they just duck, and then you move down, and they come back up, and it's just a nightmare, you know. So it's a lot of busy work, a lot of tedious stuff, and there are collectibles as well that I missed out to mention, but the collectibles just kind of give you a little bit of backstory on like dossiers, on like characters and things like that. But as I said, I just got so lost and sort of confused of who I was and what I was doing in the story that I just gave up with the story completely and was just focused on shooting things and getting from one level to the next. So for me personally, I wasn't interested in going into the extras menu and reading any of the dossiers or any of the other collectibles, because I was just like, I can't bother. I don't know. So I don't know what's going on. So I don't really care about learning what's going on, if that makes sense. So yeah, I'm glad I bought it on a sale. Definitely get this when it's on sale. Don't buy full price for it. That's my opinion. But if you do see it on sale and you want a good sort of easy bit of achievements or trophies, and you want that nostalgia hit, then by all means pick it up. Otherwise, best to wait for a sale. To be honest, that's sort of my best sort of recommendation. As for sort of what I'm going to be looking at next, so it's a secret. But you will find out closer towards Halloween. And that is all I'm going to say about that. It is another £5 video game, but it's a special one because it's a Halloween special. And I won't say any more what the game is or what it focuses on, but the only thing I will say is that it's a game that I have been meaning to play for years. And I finally thought, you know what, I'm going to be brave and to play it. It is a Halloween game. It is a scary game. I did get it for £5 from CX, so it enters the criteria. So expect a Halloween special episode next. But thank you very, very much for listening to so far to this series. If you have been listening to this series, for checking it out. This was only going to be a series I was going to do a few episodes on just to see what people thought and think. And so far, the reception has been very, very high. So apart from the next game that I'm going to be looking at in Halloween, I currently actually don't have any ideas of what I'm going to cover next. So basically, if you have any ideas or any games that you've seen on sale that you'd like to give me, recommend me, or like to hear me talk about, then by all means, please do let me know. Most likely, if it's on Xbox Store, that'd be easier for me because, again, I don't really use Steam and I'm not really a PC gamer and I don't have a PlayStation. So mostly if you see them on the Xbox Store, then please do let me know. Or if there are other games that you want me to check out that are not like under £5, then by all means, let me know there. So I'm going to leave it in you guys' hands now to kind of find games and see anything else that you want me to talk about, or you see a game on sale, you're like, you know what, I really want to hear Luke's opinion on this, then by all means, please let me know. Any sort of genre, I don't really mind. Just remember the criteria is that it needs to be £5 or less. As long as it's £5 or less, then that's completely fine. And yeah, so thank you very much for listening to me talk about the 13. Check it out if you want to, but by all means, wait for a sale. And yeah, that is all she wrote. Thank you very, very much for listening, for tuning in. I've been your host, Luke the Human. You've been listening to the Nerdstalgic podcast, and I will catch you all in the next one.